Random House Audio presents A Woman in Charge, The Life of Hillary Rodham Clinton by Carl Bernstein. Read for you by Dick Rodstein. At noon on February 12, 1999, Hillary Rodham Clinton, wearing a simple blouse, flat shoes, sensible pants, and a smile, strode into her sitting room with its majestic view of the Washington Monument and the Capitol's Great Mall. The meeting she was about to convene would change the course of her life, and to an extent yet to be determined, the history of her country. Since the day she had met Bill Clinton in 1971, she had stood by her man through all manner of harrowing twists and turns, including, most famously and most recently, the national out-of-body experience known as the Lewinsky Affair, on this day reaching its long-overdue denouement. More than a year had passed since she and the country had first heard the name Monica Lewinsky, a year in which her world had been turned upside down and Washington with it. Now Hillary Clinton was about to cut loose, though not from her marriage necessarily, or from Washington, or from her tether to the national consciousness. Rather, a profound alteration in her relationship to all three was reaching critical mass. She was moving toward a final decision on whether to run for the United States Senate from the state of New York, where she had never lived, and to become the First Lady to run for office. Downstairs in the Oval Office, the President was receiving reports from aides, glued grimly to television pictures of the chamber to which his wife aspired. As the Senate's 100 members were called to order by the Chief Justice of the United States, the relative solemnity of the occasion was indicated by the special robes William Rehnquist had designed for himself to wear at the President's trial. Their gold-embroidered, striped and ruffled sleeves had been inspired, appropriately, by a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta. On each senator's desk lay a red leather folder containing the formal printed charges, perjury and obstruction of justice, against the President, and a tally sheet to track the vote. The result of the roll call about to begin was a foregone conclusion. A two-thirds majority was required to convict, and it was known that only Republicans would cast ballots in favor. 45 on the first charge, 50 on the second. Clinton, the first president to be impeached by the House of Representatives since Andrew Johnson in 1868, would be acquitted of high crimes and misdemeanors. Clinton would survive in office due principally to the actions of his wife, just as their tangled relationship, more than any other factor arguably, was responsible for his being impeached in the first place. 7 years later, Bill Clinton was trying to figure out what to do with his life. She, meanwhile, was trying to become president. After a single term in the Senate, she had transformed herself from First Lady cuckold to the most talked about and important leader of her party, the most polarizing politician in the land, a senator like no other, a celebrity like no other, taking the country on another wild Clintonian ride as she became close to omnipresent in what passed for socio-political dominance. On TV, in arguments every night at dinner tables all over America, in the foreign press, among her Senate colleagues, in the precincts of the supposed vast right-wing conspiracy that had tried to kill Clintonism. By the time of her overwhelming re-election to the Senate in 2006, she had inspired a non-stop national and international dialogue about herself, her politics, her business acumen, her future, her morals, her sexuality, her religion, her looks, her marriage. Still, single-handedly, she had reanimated the enemies of Clintonism to new heights of fear and frenzy. The public attention drawn to her person, abetted by a press whose hunger she fed unabatedly, at times exceeded even that of the incumbent president, who had been declared elected in 2000 by the same Chief Justice who wore the Gilbert and Sullivan robes, and his colleagues on the Supreme Court. George W. Bush, winner of the first presidential election in American history to be decided not by the electorate but by the judiciary, had prevailed following a campaign promising voters that he would restore honor and traditional American values to the White House after its desecration by the Clintons, plural. Yet, as the disastrous presidency of her husband's successor neared expiration, Hillary Clinton, in a nation besotted with celebrity, had come to a prominence unique in her time, settling in a rarefied place never populated even by FDR, Princess Diana, Ike, Oprah, or Eleanor Roosevelt. As, in a great cacophony, people from every station and walk of life, plus talk show hosts and the National Enquirer, fulminated, debated, and screamed at each other about her. Those abroad asked Americans they encountered, "Who is she? Do you like her? Will she become president? Is she gay?" Meanwhile, she continued to play the U.S. Senate like a flute, charming her colleagues on both sides of the aisle, raising record funds for members of her own party, and preparing the financial ground for her own presidential campaign, entertaining the troops in Iraq, and carefully supporting their mission, while looking for ways to separate herself from the policies of the president who sent them there, and from her own vote that had helped dispatch them. In all this, Bill Clinton had become her biggest booster. As roles now reversed, the gears of the Clinton apparatus shifted, and another Clinton sought the presidency. He was now a constant presence in the background, as her counsel, consultant, strategist, and finally, the elemental part of her process as a woman in charge. The years of the Clinton presidency delineated what many friends and associates regarded as the most profound difference of character between Hillary and Bill Clinton: her capacity for personal growth and change. Emotionally, he's still the same guy who got off the boat after Oxford, a worn-out presidential assistant said as the Clintons left the White House on January 20th, 2001. Hillary, sworn in on January 3rd as New York's junior senator, had, on the other hand, demonstrated extraordinary capability for change and evolutionary development. From Goldwater girl to liberal Democrat, from fashion victim to power suit sophisticate, from embattled First Lady to establishmentarian senator. In the course of the 22 years that took them from Yale Law School to the governorship of Arkansas to the presidency, the Clintons had formed their politics, a very specific set of values and calculations arrived at from their separate experiences, expertise, and backgrounds, joined, tempered, and perfected in endless discussion, always with the understanding that they were on a journey together. And though her intellectual firepower was not nearly as spectacular as his, and her political instincts could be clumsy, she was in every sense his political partner, the person with whom he discussed every significant matter of policy, strategy, ideology, or ambition. Bill and Hillary's marriage would prove to be an uninterrupted dialogue of ideas and aspirations, and a lasting love, often punctuated by passionate argument. Her counsel was the constant of his method and political development, though in the Little Rock governor's mansion and later the White House, he would on occasion, sometimes to her frustration, follow a course at variance from the one she advised. The journey, their term, was at once endlessly romantic and unapologetically ambitious, a trek across the political landscape in which they intended to inspire the expansion of their country's social consciousness, based on their own ideas and ideals, and those of their generation. There is no question, judging from their own words and those of their friends, that since their courtship, each had come to regard the other as the brightest star in their universe, that this fusion of energy and purpose was never just about him, but about them, and the art of the possible. They would change the American story. To their opponents and enemies, who grew ever more numerous and outraged as the Clintons marched toward the summit, seemingly unbowed by humiliation and unfazed by peril, ambush, and attacks that would have felled lesser mortals, their journey was an act of hubris such as modern American politics had never witnessed. Hillary Rodham's childhood was not the suburban idyll suggested by the shaded front porch and gently sloping lawn of what was once the family home at 235 Wisner Street in Park Ridge, Illinois.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?